Hey, what's going on, leaders? Aaron Bolton here. Thank you so much for watching this episode of Leadership Lockdown. I really appreciate it. And if you like this video, consider giving it a thumbs up. If it's your thing, if you want to subscribe, maybe get notified, then go ahead and click subscribe and hit that little bell right next to it. I mean, you don't have to. Yeah, I definitely. You're good to go?
Yeah, man.
All right, let's. Because this is all going to be in it. I'll chop some of this out. It's all good content. No. Yep. All right. Hello, everyone. Hello, leaders. Thank you for watching another episode here of Leadership Lockdown. I am very happy to be with a person I've known for 5 years now. And he is an author, speaker, trainer, a coach. He is the founder and CEO of RedRock Leadership. And he's also the author of the book by the same name, RedRock Leadership. Jeff Ruby. Jeff, how you doing, sir?
Good, Aaron. Thanks for having me here.
Oh, no. Thank you.
Really happy to be on your show.
Thank you for being on the show. Right before we get into it, I want to tell you a couple things. Number one, when we just talked a few days ago, and I said, "Oh, let me download let me get the book." So I go to check on your book, and Amazon wouldn't have it here in time. So I was like, "All right." And then something happened outside. I had my kids or something. I'm sure something took my mind away. And it wasn't until this morning I woke up. I don't deal with Kindle, and I don't know what it is. I woke up. I was like, "Oh, I can get it on Kindle." So I downloaded it on Kindle. So I apologize because I haven't read through the book yet. I started reading it. But so far from what I've read, I like it. I really do.
Thank you.
And I like the way I was seeing how it was laid out. I like the way it's laid out too. That's number one. Number two, you are one of the inspirations for this podcast. So I thank you for that. You have your own leadership podcast, and I started seeing that. And I'm competitive, but not competitive as in I'm gonna, run that person over. It's more of a, in the same industry, we're in the same industry, and I've been thinking about doing that, wanting to do it. And then I saw you're doing it. I was like, well, come on, I got to do it too, because I was thinking next time I talk to him, he's going to say podcast, and he's going to say, hey, you should have one. And I'm going to say, I know. Yeah. So
right.
So thank you. So thank you for helping this come along. Appreciate it.
Yeah, you're welcome. Happy to be here. Really looking forward to this.
Awesome.
And thank you for the kind words about the book.
Oh, well, I'm really excited about reading more into it and getting into it. I really am. Cool. So Strange Times. I think we should have a podcast called Strange Times, right?
That's the quarantine series. I like to call it.
The quarantine series. I like it. I can see it already. The whole point of this show is, well, people they're in front of on a regular basis, let's say in the office or just around other people that they can lean on for advice. And, if they're going through challenges, like we all go through challenges, there's someone there they can ask or someone they can talk to. But even at that, a lot of people don't do that. Maybe they feel shy or embarrassed. They feel like the other person might think they should know these things that they're challenged with, not realizing that other person or someone else there is going through those similar challenges, right? But now we're in a position where so much of the workforce is working from home. They probably have those same challenges from before, similar challenges from before, but now a bunch of changes, a whole slew of new challenges. And now there's no one there around them where they can ask, hey, help me out. I need some help. And even if they maybe do reach out to their manager, their boss, whoever, those individuals are slammed too, trying to figure things out. So the whole point of this podcast, this video series, is to talk to different leaders in different industries, find out, what were some of the challenges they were going through before, and talk about where they're at now, how they're maybe having to adjust or pivot their business, pivot their workload, and what are the challenges they're going through now, but not just resting on that, taking the next level and say, okay, well, how are you overcoming it? What advice can you give to others? So I'll start off with you. If you could just give us a rundown of RedRock Leadership, the book, how the book came to be. By the way, when I saw that on LinkedIn, I was so excited for you. I think I messaged you
Yeah,
immediately. So very happy about that. But yeah, if you can give us a rundown about,
sure.
your coming up and everything, that'd be great.
That's great. Yeah, it's taken me all year last year to write the book, and so it was super cool to have it release. Not so super cool to have it release just on about the same day that they start issuing these lockdowns, so or these quarantines. But that's okay. It's we're making the best of it and getting great reviews. But basically, the premise for the book is it really it speaks to people that are in a position to influence other people. And so one of the taglines is you don't have to be a leader and to be in leadership. And just because you're in leadership doesn't mean that you're a leader.
Right.
And I would say about 5 years ago started to notice my business going from more of a sales training business to a leadership training business.
Mm-hmm.
And I latched onto that because I was intrigued. I've always wanted to do more with leadership, but it just didn't. I'd never really clicked. It was like always getting these requests for sales training because there's this return on investment associated with sales training. So when the market started to shift a little bit, I became intrigued. And that's when I really started to do more investigation on emotional intelligence and what that really means and how does that fit into leadership and so on and so forth. So that was a really cool shift for me. And then I started doing a lot of investigation on the different generations in the workforce and how that impacts us. And so it just become a really, the way the book got put together, just from pulling all of this information together, I didn't think it was going to come together like it did. It really caused me even shift some of the way that I trained. But the way it all came together in the book, and I think I wrote 2 rough drafts, went through the content editing process twice, just did a ton of research, way more than I ever thought I'd get. And then I get the book, and it's a 200-page book, and I'm like, I thought it would be more than that, But the people that are telling me that they're reading it, they're like, no, it's good. It's a quick read. It flows good. It's got ample amount of research plus stories that I've used over the years. So it's been a really interesting run, and I really am happy about it. Really
That's
am.
really cool. I like how you said, you mentioned about 5 years ago, that you saw that change happening. And it's funny because that's when I saw that change happening too. I was working at a company. I wasn't in the position where I'm in now, actually being able to set my own day, set my own business and whatnot. But I started seeing that change, and there was a struggle there for a while between leadership and management, which we know that, there's that difference. But even when different businesses are asking for leadership development, because now it turned into something that was almost niche, and it was defined, and then it started spreading popularity. So then it almost became a buzzword, leadership development. And any type of training that a leader or manager would do was kind of clumped in leadership development. Were you seeing that as well?
For sure. Yeah. At first, and I remember there's a quote I quoted it for the longest time. It came out of a LinkedIn article that I'd read, and forgive me, I can't remember exact source, but the source said that organizations that are adhering to leadership training and leadership development are 6 times more likely to be among the top performers of any industry. And I hung on to that for so long and really began to see it myself, did my own study. And I think it was a low figure, but I think when it started to shift, you're right. It was very cliche. I don't think people really knew what they were looking for.
Right.
And
That's what it was.
yeah, but I tell you what, the one thing I feel very blessed about and very, I don't know, I'm almost humbled, because when I started to put together the keys to what I figured were the 5 key components of emotional intelligence, which I think it's a universal understanding that there's these 5 key components, but I really took them and I would say RedRock them and put them into play, and really started to see some amazing progress, some amazing growth happening. And it's funny, we didn't really even call it leadership training. We called it emotional intelligence training.
Right.
Then we began to figure out, man, this is really leadership.
That's absolutely,
Yeah.
that connection. I've read
Yeah.
that you nailed it right on the head with that. Yeah, I still get, I'm seeing it now when I'm talking to clients, when I start doing a needs analysis, discovery process, and they'll say it's almost equivalent to, and I'm sure you'll agree with that. We need communications training. It's like, okay, well,
Right.
everything you do is let's
Right.
narrow it down.
Yeah.
And I started seeing that as well, where when I was responding to someone requesting leadership development, I was always trying to, at first, to gauge what they defined leadership development to be. And it
Yep.
was, it was either I'm not too sure, or, they wouldn't come out and say I'm not too sure, but you could figure it out for a while. There wasn't really a hardcore definition that I noticed. That I even noticed it when I went to the ATD, the Association of Talent Development, their worldwide conference 2 years ago. Yeah, 2 years ago. And I was and I had just started a leadership development course at the company I was with, a program. And I was in a breakout session, a big one, with AT&T and Harvard Review. And they were talking about the leadership development program they started at AT&T. And then it was like a case study. And then they said, well, here's the problem. And for the next session, the next round of classes, we're all going to break out in our own individual tables and come up with, solutions. And those are a lot of the same issues that I had run into. So I'd already kind of solutioned some of them. So I talked about it at the table, and one of the ladies who wasn't really paying attention, she kind of perked up and started paying attention, and engaged with me talking. And then when everyone was sharing, I raised my hand, I went up to the mic, and I gave a couple suggestions. And I said, one more thing. Uh, I said two things. Is this an issue, a real issue that you're currently facing in AT&T? And are you using this as a venue to grab ideas? And she said, yes, and yes. I was like, genius. And then I found out the lady from who was paying more attention, she was actually from Harvard Business Review. And further conversation with her, I realized it was still 2.5 years ago, still so new. AT&T was still trying to figure out the leadership development concept of everything, and so was like the other lady, from Harvard Review. So I think it's interesting that it wasn't just it was industry wide. This trying to
Exactly.
figure this out.
Yeah, it really is. Yeah, no doubt.
So what challenges did you, or were you coming into? What are like the main challenges you'd come into, let's say a month ago? Let's pause everything about a month, 2 months ago. What were some of the challenges that you'd be running into?
In terms of, are you talking the challenges that my clients were running into, or the things I was hearing from people as far as the challenges they were having, or the challenges that I was having as a trainer coach?
The challenges you were having as a trainer coach.
I would say one of the things that consistently is an issue, and I talk about this in the opening part of my book, where I'll come out and do some training for a company, and I'll get folks that'll come up to me at the end of the training session or a break, and they'll begin to ask me some questions, because one of the things that we incorporate the very first part of our training is we unveil the 5 key skills of emotional intelligence: personal awareness, integrity, internal motivation, empathy, and social skills. And then we also unveil a leadership assessment in that process, and they take a look at their assessment, and we begin to look at what their driving forces look like and their behavior styles and the integration of all those things. We start talking about company culture.
Mhm.
And so that immediately comes to a place where it gets very personal with people. And
Yes.
some organizations don't have a defined culture. And
Mhm.
we begin to talk about the frustrations that will occur inside of a culture, and the company where the culture is not defined. So I'll get individuals that come up to me on the break, and they'll say, I think the biggest issue that is going on right now is the leadership of this organization. And so, and I've seen this over and over again, pretty consistently for the last year. And I would say that one of the greatest challenges that I have to face on a daily basis, not just in the last month, but I would say over the past 12 months, is being able to communicate effectively to leadership that they have called me in, like you said, to fix a perceived problem, such as communication, or people aren't playing nice in the sandbox or whatever it might be. And as we begin to do the training, we begin to unveil that the culture is not defined. And to some extent, I know that's going to happen. And I do the best I can to front load that and let them know what they're going to incur when they have me come in and do this training. But then when I come back around to explain that to them and to help them and to coach leadership in that, you're met with resistance sometimes. And there's this dichotomy that exists where people will say, well, no, it's not me, it's my people. And the people
Right.
say, well, no, it's not me, it's leadership.
Right.
And so, one of the greatest challenges I have is being able to peel that back and be diplomatic. And that's a challenge when you're not somebody who's a very diplomatic person.
Right. Right.
And you have to lay that out for them. So it's a challenge. But the thing is about that is I love challenges. So that's a fun part about the job that I do, but it's also a great challenge.
Yeah. Wow. I can completely concur with you on that one. And I'm sure you also run into where leadership comes in and they say either this position on down or maybe middle management or whatever it is, they need
Right.
they need this information or this knowledge. We need to teach them. No problem. But then the leadership removes themselves from the equation where they need it, and maybe they'll pop in a little bit, through sessions and pop out. Have you run into that challenge?
I have, but I will tell you that I'm pretty strict about the idea that leadership must be in the room. And
Yep.
I've actually walked away from deals before where leadership says, no, I don't need to be there. You come in and talk to my people. And I've walked away from deals, but you do still run into those situations. We'll say, oh no, I'll be there. And
Right.
then they're in and they're out. They're in and they're out. And that does pose a challenge. And, it is, especially when, they've invested a significant amount of money
Right.
and, in these expectations. And many times, those conversations are short-lived
Yeah.
because it is such a buzz out there today, the idea of leadership, and there's such a crowded space and a lot of promises being made and a lot of, it's a very curb appealing type investment that companies will make. And so
Right.
but it is an all-inclusive assignment, no question.
Absolutely. And I knew you knew that, I know that. The reason I really mentioned that, the main reason is for anyone else out there watching this, because this isn't just going to be viewed by, people in our industry. It's, anyone out there with that ability, with the opportunity to hire and set up someone, a course or program like we're talking about. Leadership needs to be there. It doesn't work. If you're looking for really short-term effects, okay, maybe, but
I would even, but I would even say, I don't mean to jump in here, but I would even say back in the day, I've been training now for 20 plus years, probably showing my age, but I started my first training company. I was 30 years old.
When you were 5 years old, when you're 5.
When I was 5, that's it. Yeah.
Right.
When I was young, but when I started doing that training, you could come out and, you could give a little jolt, a little short-term, motivation and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
But I'll tell you what, this is something that I would really give fair warning to anybody looking to invest in leadership training. It's not like it used to be. If you're not going to get a jolt, if anything, it's like slashing a tire, because if you bring somebody in and they begin to speak about true leadership, it's going to expose what's
Yeah.
going on in that organization. And many times that could be detrimental. So don't leave the room and think that the speaker you just hired is going to inflate the room. What that speaker might be saying they may be the greatest speaker, greatest trainer you could have ever found.
Right.
But but they could actually be deflating the tires.
Absolutely. Well, 100%. I can't tell you so many times that many times I've been in that situation. Maybe the upper leadership isn't, even if it's director down, if there is some form of leadership missing out of there, I have heard on the break or even in the middle of class, someone asking, are the higher ups going to get this information? Because that's
Yep.
where a lot of the issues are coming from. And if if they know that they're not, they're out. They're out, because why? Their thought is, well, why am I going to invest in all of this? Try to do as much and as I can, and then it's just going to get squashed from up down. So, yeah,
Yeah.
that's definitely super important for all leadership to take part. Why wouldn't you? You definitely would. You want to. So now so many things have changed, right? In the past few weeks, and it's so crazy to think that it's only really been a few weeks. That all of this is really taking place. What is your what's your day-to-day looking like now?
It's Zoom mania.
Right.
Yeah, it's just it's Zoom mania. I mean, it's just all day long on Zoom calls. And I do more than just speaking and more than just keynotes and training sessions. I do a fair amount of what's called active sales management, where I'm working with emerging growth companies that are in need of creating mid-level structures, sales management structure, things like that, tracking systems, and then doing some leadership training alongside of that. But so a lot of mine is day-to-day combat, day-to-day coaching, and those kind of things. But yeah, I mean, as far as my training goes, and I'm still doing a fair amount of that, it's live webcasting, just like this.
So what are the biggest challenges now that I mean, unless you're still going in your office or you're working from home? Well, what are you working from home mainly, going to your
I
office?
am. No, I'm not going to the office at all. No, I pretty much shut the office down, shut the training center down, and doing everything from home. But I'd say my biggest challenge is turning it off, shutting it down.
Mm.
I'm a task oriented guy. I love to get in and just drive, and I've been doing a fair amount of podcasting and writing and just trying to encourage people, and there's it's so funny. People think that when you go home to work, you're going to be lazy. I've found the contrary. I'm actually starting to see people beginning to burn out a little bit
Yep.
already. And that's something that we're going to have to address, and something we're going to have to be careful about.
Yeah, it got to a point where, work-life balance is the phrase work-life balance is almost got to a point overused as like leadership development, where it was being used for its purpose, its correct purpose. It was being used for like leaders trying to pull more from employees. It was being used with it was so varying. And now the concept of work-life balance is so much more important to have that defined, because yeah, I mean, like I was saying, my wife's a guidance counselor at elementary school. She's having to do that from work. I'm from home. I'm having to do that. I'm having to do this work from home. We have two children here, one of which is in first grade, who's going through, online e-learning, So, yeah. So how are you best overcoming any of the challenges that you're running into?
Sticking to a routine. My kids my oldest just got married in February, and so
Oh,
she's
awesome.
she's living happily ever after with her new husband in Jacksonville. My youngest is at school at college, and so she's in her apartment, quarantined in her apartment, and so she's we keep in touch with her. But with the family, we are having these kind of Zoom calls weekly, a couple times a week, where we get everybody on the screen, and we're making sure that we're having some family time and enjoying each other. But my thing is, for me, I'm a routine guy. I get up 4:30, 5 o'clock in the morning. I get my reading in, I get my run in, and then I turn my computer on. And that's not really changed. The only thing that's changed for me is I don't get in my car and go anywhere.
Right.
So, but I've been sticking to my routine. And then really for me, it's shutting things down at 5 or 5:30 and just making sure I shut it down. The computer's closed, my phone's on the charger, and I've got some time with my wife, and, we'll take a walk and play a game, watch a movie, just enjoy each other in the evening. And so that's been my routine. And I'm actually kind of enjoying it. I'm kind of one of these guys that's like, hey man, if I had to stay in my house for the rest of my life and cook my meals and, do all my exercise at home and work from home, I hate to say it, I'd probably be okay with it.
Oh
I
yeah,
mean,
no, I get it.
I miss seeing my kids, and like I said to my wife, we love traveling. That part, we would get old, but I mean, I'm kind of digging it. I kind of like it.
And I don't know if it's, how you hang out with, you speak to, you connect with people who are like you mostly, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So the people I've been talking to, and I haven't really thought about until right now, so I haven't really been able to dissect it. But I know that the people I've been talking to for the past couple of weeks have all said the same thing that you just said. That yeah, it's challenging. There are definitely some challenges, but there are some positives. There are some really great positives to being here. That they wouldn't have thought, from the onset, but now living in it, it's like, oh, I am able to spend that time with my kids at, where I usually, even working from home, they come home from school and they need to go over there because daddy has something business focused on or whatever. But having the breaking up the day, having to switch back and forth and between me and my wife, who's watching the kids, that's actually helped some. So it's not that I don't get burnt out in one project, where I can take a break and walk away and come back and see it from a fresh perspective. So
Yeah, I actually envy a couple of my buddies who still have kids at home and are telling me about, how they're really connecting with their kids in a way they never had. And, I'm a little envious of that. And my wife and I talk about this, been talking about this a lot lately. It's, you see how some folks, were affected by the Great Depression, or some folks were affected by 9/11, or, different things that have happened in history. I think it's going to be a very interesting study to see how these people that have lived through this, how this generation is going to be affected. And I don't think this is going to be something that's going to affect us negatively. I mean, a lot of people have gotten their finances under control.
right.
We thought this was going to be detrimental financially, and unfortunately it is. I don't make light of it. I know that a lot of people have lost their jobs, and that is very detrimental, and you hate to hear about those things. But it's also given people an opportunity to look and see where's their spending, right? And
Right.
where, heck, it'd be nothing for us to, go out and grab sushi and, you grab something to eat, and, it's $40 a couple times a night, a couple times a week. Right. And
Right.
you're like, all of a sudden you're not spending that kind of money. You get an idea to see, okay, well, hold on a second here. And I know I'm walking a fine line because we want to support the economy.
Right.
But
Right.
it really does, from a balance perspective, it brings things into focus.
Yeah, and I don't think by anything you said is not supporting the economy. I think what you're addressing is maybe a culture that in America we've gotten used to overt consumerism.
Right. Agree.
Where we haven't. I think yesterday, 2 days ago, my wife had to run to do something for some errand. But on the way back, she stopped by Chick-fil-A and she grabbed Chick-fil-A, and that was the first time we ate out and had food not prepared at home in a good little while. And I was even a little shocked. Like I actually wanted to say something like, maybe we should be concerned, but I was like, no, but it a month ago I never would have thought about it. It was like, oh yeah, it's another thing, another time we've ordered food. So I like that, because when you prepare food at the house or make the food, then you're around the people that you love and you want to be around. It's more
Yeah.
turned to a social thing, rather than here's the food, let's eat it, let's take it from the box, put it on a plate, and then watch TV. So
Right. I mean,
I'm
it's
liking this.
just that I am too. I mean, the time is much more precious, more intimate. The conversation. I mean, our conversations are much more meaningful. You're at a
Hmm.
restaurant, you're constantly getting interrupted, and like I said, I've okay, I've taken
Right.
a lot for granted. We
Right.
really
Right.
have. So I'm learning
Guilty.
to
Yeah.
appreciate things. Yeah.
Absolutely. So you mentioned generations. So I did get to some in your book, but something that jumped out at me is chapter 1. By the way, I love the name of this chapter. Let's see, the impact of the furious pace of change. That that is like a phenomenal book I would read. Like if that was just the name of the book, like, oh my goodness, that's awesome. But you talk about in that chapter, you talk about the 6 generations. You break it down, the influences, the traits, and the views of each one of the generations. But one thing I wanted to get your comment on. Oh, let me go back here. Let me find the page here. This is how you know I'm not used to Kindles. Uh,
That's all right.
Let's see. All
All
right,
right.
here we are. Uh, at the section, first chapter in the section, a cultural shift is underway. You wrote, for the first time in history, there are 5 generations in the workforce at the same time. However, for the first time in almost 60 years, the participation of retirees, those 65 and older in the workforce, has cracked the 20% mark. Now, with this in mind, if you can talk a little on the cultural shift, and afterwards, if I can get your opinion, if you feel that what we're going through right now was maybe an unforeseen catalyst for this cultural shift.
Interesting. So the idea of the cultural shift and where we are with the folks in the workforce today. I've been saying this over and over and over again, is we have a crisis on our hands. There are not enough people to do the amount of work that is required of the companies that we have. And so, what's happened is you've got Gen Z or Gen X rather, and that's me. That's the 50 somethings, right? That was the generation that didn't get the number of people.
Right.
And that's primarily because of the downturn in the economy in the 70s. Many of the boomers didn't populate. We had dinks. Many boomers waited to have kids. They had millennials. And so, it just, the population sort of slowed. The growth of the population slowed. So you have all these Gen Xers who by nature are extremely critical, extremely skeptical, and very one-minded, kind of a very very focused, driven. But then you have this baby boomer. They're sandwiched by baby boomers, and they're sandwiched then by the millennials.
Right.
And so the millennials are pushing in. They are raised by the Xers who basically now they're all into family, they're all into work-life balance. Things that the Gen Xers were trying to press on and wanted, and that this is what they got. But then you got these boomers who don't want to get old, right? And
right.
And quite frankly, they don't have the money to retire because they're the type of generation that they whatever they earn, they spend.
Right.
But what's happening is that we're beginning to see that where we're going to get many of the workers we need to do the work that needs to be done are going to be some of those baby boomers who are stepping out and then right back in. And so it's a very interesting thing that's happening in our culture today, is that you get the kind of the Gen Xers who are supposedly, so for the most part in their prime, sort of exiting their prime. Still, many of them make up a large majority of the business owners, but they don't think like the other generations do. There's a big shift. And in addition to that, we have this furious pace of change, right? So things are just constantly changing. And now they say that the 20s right here, we're going to be like the roaring 20s again from a technology standpoint. Nothing's going to be the same for a long time. And it's very interesting to be here where we are today. And what's interesting is the web didn't crash.
Right.
The electric grid didn't go down. This is a natural disaster,
Right.
something that we were completely unprepared for. And what I see is very interesting, Aaron, is that now you see these 3 generations. I'm not talking about Gen Z, and I'm not going to really mention traditionalists right now. I'm just going to talk about the 3 generations, the prominent ones. That'd be the millennials, the Xers, and the boomers. They've got to pull it together now. And so you're seeing a lot of boomers have to stay out. They got to stay out of the stores, right? They got to stay out. They can't stay out in public. You got to get, you're the most susceptible of getting ill. The Xers are the ones that now I've got to look around and say, hold on a second. I got to hold on. I can't be so skeptical anymore. I've got to actually listen to what's going on. I have to listen to authority. I've got to listen to what's happening in the news and the social media, which I don't trust. Then you have the millennials who are, skeptical by nature anyway and entrepreneurial minded. And they just want to kind of go out and continue to do business as usual and form their companies and do what they do. And now they're having to change as well. So really interesting. I didn't, think about any of this, obviously, while I was writing the book.
Right.
I was just thinking about how fast things are going. Now you look at it reverse, you're like, hold on a minute. Now everything's come to a screeching halt. But it's very interesting to see it all come to a screeching halt, and all these generations have to cooperate. So I'm not sure if that's where you're going with the question.
No,
but very interesting.
Yeah, no, I definitely see that with well, how about with this cultural change on the outside of this? Let's take that cultural change and also marry in the industry that we're in, leadership development, professional development. Where do you see that the industry going from this point on? Because a lot of it traditionally up until now has been face to face, but I don't see this from whatever I'm hearing, people that I usually agree with and people I don't usually agree with. Everyone's kind of agreeing that this isn't going to be a turnaround. Next month, we're going to be out walking the streets. However, leadership development, professional development is going to have to continue. So where do you see that going right now? I know everyone in our position, we're all in like #pivot stage, right? We're like, okay, what are we doing here? So where do you see this going?
Well, here's the thing I want to make sure that we understand is that empathy is the foundational skill in leadership, right?
Yes.
There's experts, leadership gurus everywhere will agree that empathy is a foundational skill. One of the things I call out in the book is that empathy also you have to have social skills, right? So you have to, not only is empathy is being able to recognize other people's emotions and respond to those emotions, but social skills being able to build positive relationships. But here's the key. Those are interpersonal skills.
Mm-hmm.
The intrapersonal skills, personal awareness, integrity, and internal motivation, those are our intrapersonal skills. Those are the skills that are inside of us. And here's what you're really seeing now. It's really coming through big time. And this is something that I've seen just being on these Zoom calls with, the 50 or the 100 people that I've had to encounter over the course of the last couple of weeks. Personal awareness is low. It's been low for a long time, but you are really seeing it now because how people come to a Zoom meeting, how they're able to enter a meeting. Are they able to get the audio right? Are they able to get the video right? And it's annoying to people, right? It's like, okay, man, we're on week 3.5 of this, and you don't know how to turn your camera on yet. You know what I mean? And people have to understand that is a personal awareness skill, right? This is personal awareness is recognizing your influence on others. How do you enter a meeting? But it's always been there. Here's what I see happening in terms of leadership training. I think millennials are the ones that really, really get it. I think that they really understand and appreciate training. I don't think the boomers ever feel like they need training. And I'm speaking very
general. Right.
So there's one boomer out there that's watching right now that's all frustrated because they think that, it's like, but they just say, you have to understand, you're the only one. Okay.
Right.
But most boomers they don't appreciate training. Just because look at the way they were raised, right? But millennials, they do. And Xers, they do if they can get a return on investment from it. That's the big thing with Gen Xers.
Yeah, they want to see that money. They want to see it quickly, a quick ROI.
Yeah. Now let's talk about Gen Z for a minute, because this gets really interesting. Gen Z, they're not into this live call stuff. Gen Z wants it recorded. They want to, they want to get it on YouTube.
Yep.
Send me the recording. Let me see the YouTube video. But you could see this is a present tense ordeal here. when you're on a Zoom call, you need to be present tense. And this is not comfortable for Gen Z. Gen Z wants to be on YouTube. They want to have, a podcast going in the background, and they want to have a textbook open, right? And they want to be able to do their everything, Skype message all at the same time. So where I see this heading is, I think that the leaders need to understand, I think they will understand, that personal development and training people on what it means to have integrity, what it means to have personal awareness, to get those empathy skills up, and to get those social skills really working, because we're gonna have to up that game big time.
Oh, yes.
Face-to-face communication takes, and this is not face-to-face communication. You understand that, right? I mean,
Absolutely.
So face-to-face
communication. My heart's breaking a little bit right now, but okay.
But this is something, this is not what when you read about face-to-face communication and body language, I'm convinced this is not necessarily this. Yeah. I mean, this is a level in between face-to-face and voice-to-voice. But so anyway, I think that, I think leaders are going to come to understand that personal development and leadership is going to be key to making this new world go and propel themselves forward, propel their organizations forward. So
absolutely, great answer. No, that makes complete sense. One thing that I've seen in this is, and it's something I've been noticing for a while now, as great as technology has become, right? I mean, just think about this. Zoom, by the way, I even thought about it. I thought about it a week ago. I was like, Zoom, I need to put money in Zoom. I don't know if they're public. I need to put money in Zoom, because I heard people that because I've used Zoom for a couple of years, and I've heard people who have never had to do, well, my wife, everyone in Hillsborough County public schools uses Zoom. And when I started hearing that, I was like, wait, that's not localized. And now all they're talking about on like the news, when they talk about conference, they're not even saying Skype. They're not saying Hangouts from Google. They're saying Zoom. And that's got to be, first of all, high five to Zoom for their marketing, having name like Zoom, because that is
right.
But yeah, that's amazing. But either way, with technology, how it is, you would imagine that, or at least I would imagine that online training would be more prevalent than what it actually is. It's still a lot is the face-to-face, which is definitely has its need. But I've seen that, yeah, I would imagine, just for how long online training has been around, that it would be a lot more well received or more utilized than what it is. And my theory is that we have some large companies in the game, that kind of jumped in around the 80s. When the management training was really getting, early 80s, late 70s, management training was really getting in there. And we have some companies that sprouted up around then, and they're still running. And they're very traditional. They keep everything what's worked in the past, and have been very slow to change, to move. And those large companies are the ones that set the pace for the industry. And I've seen a lot of other smaller companies say, yeah, online Skillshare. Skillshare is a great tool.
Right.
But it's so surprising that that's the one quick off the top of my head I can think of, And what I see happening from all this is is the online, the web-based training, the video training. That's going to go up. That's going to increase a lot. It's never going to take place for the face-to-face, because I want to see the glimmer in your eye. I want to see that soul. It's not going to take place, but a lot of the development skills can be learned, at least where it's almost like how online universities do, where you'll have some online classes, then maybe once a month everyone meets up together. I could see that. I can definitely see that happening in this industry.
Well, I can tell you this. I'm convinced that this is not, if this is maybe where you were heading, I'm not convinced that this is going to stick as a long-term solution to training people. Matter of fact, it's so interesting. I would say all of it I would just say, but just about all of the training that I had scheduled to be face to face has stuck face to face. They've delayed it all. And I've had a guy call me yesterday and say, "Listen, I got a few new people. I need some training. When are you going to be running a series again?" And I said, "Well, I'm running one in May. I'm going to do it online." He says, "When are you going to be back in your training center?" I'm like, I don't know. He's like, no, I don't want the online stuff. You got to be live. And so I think that, I mean, if anything, I think this has even convinced us more that it for personal development training needs to be in person. It does. And I don't see us shifting to e-learning. I really don't. I think e-learning is a completely different animal that,
Right.
that's a completely different animal. I think the kind of leadership training you and I do, I think people are going to appreciate the fact that you need to be in a room, interacting, getting into small groups, participating, being able to, touch your handouts and be able to see people face to face, like you said, and move around together. So I'd see that sticking around.
I wonder, moving into, I mean, this is pure speculation, talking about futures with Gen Z. Let's say that they don't have that, they don't, well, I probably not, if their culture is set the way they are, they don't like the face-to-face, they want to do it their own time. The Netflix, Hulu. By the way, I'm very annoyed that Disney Plus came out, and when they have a series, they don't drop everything at one time. You have to watch 1 week after 1 week. So I'm even like,
Right.
I got used to like the Netflix binging, but
Right.
that's what a lot of Gen Z is used to. I'm gonna do it on my time and have multiple things. I wonder if that's, or how much of effect that will have in our industry and learning development, in the next few years, 5 to 10 years probably.
That will be interesting. That will be and I do think about that because having a daughter who's Gen Z, and she does. I wouldn't say hides behind her computer, because I don't think that's it at all. I just that
Yep.
they're hyper productive,
Right.
and for them it's kind of like, well, heck, if I can just look it up on YouTube real quick and figure it out. Why do I need to get in? Why do I need to be in a class? And I mean,
I think
can't
it's
argue.
different tools, right?
Yeah, exactly.
I
Yeah.
remember I grew up on a farm, and my grandfather and my dad would both be out building something, working together on something. And I vividly remember seeing, my dad pull out his jigsaw because he had to cut something, and my grandfather pick up a handsaw. And I remember being a kid looking at that, saying, they're doing the same thing, different tools. And
Great analogy.
even though my father's tool, power tool, is going to get there faster, my grandfather felt this is more comfortable to me. This is something I know it. So that was the tool he used. So I guess, yeah, one thing that we just have to keep in mind and keep aware of is what tools are being utilized by the next group, and how
Yeah.
can we can best utilize those tools for them.
That's a great analogy. Great
Awesome.
analogy.
Well, Jeff, thank you so much for this time. I don't want to take up a whole bunch of your time here, but do you have any closing words, any closing remarks, any type of inspiration? Basically, everyone is relying on you to pick them up out of the blue right now. No pressure.
Oh
No
man.
pressure.
Yeah. No, you know what? I actually have enjoyed that. And I sometimes underestimate, I guess the influence that I have, and you probably do the same. I know you have a major influence over people, and I think it's just there's certain giftings that people get, and you and I are gifted to be able to communicate in times like this. And the one thing I would leave people with is just a couple of thoughts here. In the book, I point out there's two states of mind, right? We can live in what's called the approach state, or we can live in what's called the avoid state. And when we live in the approach state, it's a growth mindset, right? And we're focused on a more positive future. When we're in the avoid state, we're thinking about the lack of toilet paper, and, the idea that the grocery stores are sold out, and that, the disease is spreading, which, misery loves company, and we have to be real, real careful. And my message to people is guard against it. The fact of the matter is, I really believe this, and I don't believe I'm blowing smoke. I really believe the second half of 2020 is going to be an amazing year business-wise for people. I think that, this is not like a natural disaster where people are having to rebuild their homes. And
Right.
in fact, if anything, it's quite the contrary. We're building our homes like right now. This is a natural disaster. We've been given the luxury to really rebuild our homes and rebuild some brokenness. I mean, it was
Hmm.
for a lot of companies, man, it was a grind the last couple of years, a lot of individuals. And so we're being forced now to come back inside. And I would say, don't give up on that. I mean, revel in that, and look at what you have right now and see the positive and look to a more positive future, because I really believe that if you can develop the right kind of empathy skills and you can focus on a more positive future and inspire people and encourage people, you're going to come out of this thing a winner. And I put a few videos out on this and some podcasts out on this, and I've not had any one person who's negatively come at me and said, "Man, what you just said is wrong." I mean, it's person after person after person who said, "Man, you're right." And I tell people, I'm like, people want to work.
Right.
They want to work. I mean, that isn't like people don't want to work. So, some people are, I don't know how to present the market. I don't know if I should actually go out there and sell. I think that that's rude. Well, I mean, let's face it. Yes, people are getting laid off, but there are people hiring. I work with a company that hired 6 people in the last
Right.
2 weeks. So, game on. Just
Right.
focus on a more positive future, and get your expenses down. Be responsible. And let's emerge out of this thing a winner. So that's my message, and that's how I'm attempting to live my life right now and teach my kids and and anybody else who listen.
That is, Jeff, that's perfect. I have nothing to say on top of that. That's perfect closing words. Jeff, can you do me a favor? Can you tell them where they can find you?
Absolutely. Pretty much everywhere these days. You can find the RedRock Leadership podcast on iTunes, iHeartRadio, Spotify, pretty much Stitcher, Google Podcasts, Pocket Cast, all the podcast channels. You can find the RedRock Leadership book, RedRock Leadership: Transform Your Company Culture. There it is. And Unleash the Potential for Exponential Growth. You find that on Amazon. Any of the major bookseller, any online booksellers, Barnes and Noble, Kobo, iBooks, all that stuff. And then, of course, redrockleadership.com. You can come there and check us out. We've got a blog there. And so all the social media channels, I mean, I'm out there. So
RedRock Leadership will get you there, right?
That's it. Absolutely.
Awesome. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Jeff. I greatly appreciate it. I really do, buddy.
Thank you. Thank you, man. I really appreciate you having me here. Have a great weekend.
You too, bud. Awesome.
Thank you.
Good close.